So what we're going to do shortly, after a few remarks from me, is that Jan has chosen some fantastic readings, including poems, of which there are a few in the book, to give you a flavour of Raiment. And that will probably take about 20 minutes. And then I'm going to click a little switch so that we can see you all, and which will be lovely for Jan, because I know a lot of you are old friends and colleagues, and you won't have seen
family
one time, and family. So it'll be lovely to see your faces. And if you have got some questions, please do write them in Q&A, and we'll do our best to notice them and look at them. So just by way of context, it is my great pleasure as publisher at Massey University Press to publish this book. Jan and I didn't really know each other, although I had come to think a little bit more about Jan in the last couple of years when she featured in Paula Green's book about New Zealand women poets, Wild Honey. And Jan, came again to my attention. And so when she contacted me and said, would we like to publish the memoir, I was, of course, absolutely delighted. We've published the book, Jan, I don't know if you've got it there, but if you could hold it up. We're doing a special series of little hardbacks, one a year, and we're reserving these just for rather special memoirs of a literary nature. And there's quite a few photographs in it, and so it's a very intimate and personal way to read about someone's life, and we're very proud to have Jan as the fourth in this memoir series. I just wanted to say what a pleasure it was to work with Jan. Those of you who know her well will know that she's a very responsive emailer. We have lovely chats. I think, Jan, just our times of day coincide really well, actually, between Germany, and often, you're up just as we're finishing our day at work, and so the timing has been great. And so we've loved working with you and really admire your dedication and determination with this book, and how you were so responsive and so easy to work with, and it was really, really a delight. There's a couple of people who I also want to thank apart from Jan. First is Creative New Zealand, which gave us a little bit of funding to support this book, and we're always enormously grateful when that happens. And at Massey University Press, Emily Goldthorpe, who was the project editor on the book and did a lot of work with Jan, Kate Barraclough, the designer, and Sarah Thornton, our publicist. And I think it's probably true to say that, Jan, that you and Sarah have become great friends and have sort of developed your own email chat about all sorts of things, about music and movies. And so I feel we've become lovely friends. And for me personally, this book, I was at the University of Auckland in the School of English a couple of years below you, Jan. I think possibly you had graduated by the time I started, but for me, your description of the English department in those years, which was really its glory days. I think all of us who studied at that time in Auckland were so very, very lucky. And equally with the German department, with fabulous people like Catherine Spitz and John Asher, absolutely remarkable people. And you bring that forward so well. So I'm going to stop talking now. Jan's going to read, and then, as I said, right at the end, we'll bring you all in, we'll answer some questions, and then we'll say our farewells. So Jan, over to you.
Well, hello everyone, and thanks so much, Nicola, for that lovely introduction. And what a fine team you have led, all the friends I've now made, Sarah, Anna, Jane, Emily, Kate, and other hovering angelic figures. I've been looked after as never before in my writing life, except by John Denny at Puriri Press or on the 1979 tour, and feel now so fated that I hope people will enjoy reading Raiment as much as I've enjoyed this past 18 months liaising with Massey to bring it to birth. And that's where I'd like to start with my first memory, for Raiment is, after all, a memoir. I began writing the book after Corona descended on us all just after my birthday in March 2020. I'd already written a couple of childhood sequences, the Miss Morrinsville Junior 1959 one and the Hamilton one, commissioned by Alan Brunton for landfall 180 in 1991. So in 2020, I set to work for the following 9 or so months and wrote the rest. Then followed a year of editing and liaising with Massey, and at last we have this real book. I prefaced the passage I'll now read with the story, not the memory, of my birth, which you can read in the first part of the very first section, 1949 to 1961. I chose this passage as it's my first ever memory, and by reading it, I'd like to pay tribute to and celebrate my 2 brothers, both still living, Peter and Ian, though you'll hear, once Ian had arrived, we called him something else. I can see the dark panelling of the drawing room, the paisley-patterned carpet, hear my parents' voices outside as Pete and I run to the front door behind Nanny, who opens it. "Can we see Iwi? Can we see Iwi?" we chant as our mother steps in through the door usually used only for visitors. She's cradling an armful. Our father follows, carrying her little brown suitcase. He's smiling too. She bends down, lowering the bundle, and she shows us our new brother, and we hold his finger and say, "Hello, Iwi." He smells like warm milk. He has blonde fluff on his head and huge blue eyes. We love him instantly. Now there are 3 of us. Peter is nearly 5.5. I, Janet, am 4 years and 2 months. And Iwi, we cannot pronounce Ian, was born today. It is the 8th of May, 1953. We don't know that Queen Elizabeth II is about to be crowned. We don't know that Iwi was born on the 8th anniversary of VE Day, or that Iwi means bone, nation, strength. Pete takes me to my first day at kindy on his red scooter. I stand behind, holding him round the waist with one hand, and he stands on his right leg, holding the stick handlebars, and scoots with his left foot. In my other hand, I hold the leather strap of a little square tin box containing my lunch and my play lunch. We come to a stop by a big tree outside the Anglican church hall, and in I go. Pete is my best friend. He can suddenly waft away from you like a puff of dandelion, and you know he's gone inside his own thoughts. So you just say, "Pete," and he's back. He always has ideas about what we can do. Once Mum was telling us off when we'd been naughty, and he said, "Come on, Jan, let's go." So we went. Mum was just left there. It was rude of us, but she laughed later and said not to tease her. Another time, to show her how much she talked when her friends were there, he took away his milk glass when she wasn't looking at it, but at the friend she was talking to. She poured milk all over the tablecloth before she even noticed. She was a bit cross with him. But he told me when she came to give him his good-night kiss, he'd say to her, "Closer, closer," and she'd put her face so close their noses were touching. So I know he really loves her. And speaking of love, let's have a real Waikato love poem, one that Russell Haley, my good friend and mentor, once told me he thought was good. And Russell didn't hand out praise idly. A childhood secret. They were the first lovers I ever knew of, held in a house behind a paddock of daffodils, and I mustn't tell. Wifeless, lifelong, he loved her, and I'd see her empty car parked under trees, tartan rug and picnic basket from the back seat gone. They'd go in his car to places he'd chosen in the bush, by a waterfall, places less open than his metal road, where she first stopped when he waved and came from the cowshed to talk to her, his eyes cupped against the light, and with a hand more electric than a fence touched her sun-browned arm. One son, a cerebral husband, and now he who held her 50 years, all gone, and she at 81, my other mother, here. How he still holds her and the yellow flowers she stands cradling. I'd now like to talk a little bit about my title, Raiment, an archaic word, but one I've loved since I first heard the biblical quote from Matthew 6:28 to 29, which prefaces the book. And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you that Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. To me, this means we are naked, and that life itself is our garment, our raiment. I hope to show this in this next passage, an out-of-the-body experience during my adolescence in Hawick. A passage from section 2, 1962 to 66. Another day, I wake up before I wake up. I am flying around, way up high, everywhere, so incredibly happy, with other creatures all flying around too. We can go anywhere we like. Then I feel a kind of pull or a tug, as if I am joined to something below me. It is my body lying in the bed, still asleep. I think, if I don't go back in and put her on, she'll be dead. So I slip in through the back of her neck, putting on her body as if it were a garment in one, putting myself into her arms and legs, with me ending up in her head. Gradually I remember her name, Janet Mary Kemp, and what she is like, her personality, what she thinks about, the sound of her voice, who her brothers and parents are, and what they are like. Then I wake up. I have put on my earthly raiment. I get up. And to follow that up, another short passage from the sequence about the abortion 7 years later. A passage from section 4, 1970 to 71. Now I had only Johannes, so much older than me, and whose ways of thinking I was more consciously starting deeply to question and find wanting. And I had my education, such as it was, and my poems. That last was something no one could ever take away from me. That could never be aborted, for they came to me without my asking and were my gift to give to the world. I would bear them all, whatever that meant, wherever it took me, always. I would never murder them, nor let anyone else either. I would stand up for them, read them, present them, and represent them whenever they needed me to do so. That was my vow. They were part of me, my raiment. At Nicola's kind request, I'll now read a passage from the same section in honour of my fleet brothers of a time when we were becoming known as the young New Zealand poets. It includes a poem, The Iceman, as you'll hear. One day the phone rang, and it was Murray Edmund, born in Hamilton in the same year as me, whom I knew along with his wife Mary Paul of the Paul's Bookshop family, from undergraduate days at Auckland University. Murray knew I wrote poems as well as that story that had come out in Crackham. Would I like to come and read some of my poems with other Auckland poets at the New Arts Centre on Grafton Road? Somewhat trepidatious, I said I would. Some weeks later, armed with a sheaf of poems I'd typed up, I set off for the round concrete building set back from the street, almost opposite Auckland University Press, and down from 12 and 14 Grafton Road, where Tony C., Riemke Ensing and Bill Trussell and others lived. David Mitchell, a little older than us, with his round halfpenny spectacles and longish black curly hair, was the centre of attention. He had an absolute certainty about his work. He sometimes read in a high voice, sometimes in a low one, sometimes demarking passages in a stilted way, as in, "My life, Remuera, Ponsonby," to show the contrast between the dreadful Vietnam War massacre in 1968 and his loved girlfriend, she, in the kitchen, boiling an egg. Someone, perhaps Murray, who was studying drama and knew how to present things, had suggested we poets should sit on chairs on an upper dais ringed around the circle of the audience, who were divided into segments, like quarters of an orange, leaving walkways facing 2 or 3 poets in each quarter. We'd spin a poem, which meant each poet would read a line from their own chosen poem, then round to the next poet for his or her line, then on to the next, and round, making a new Dada-esque collision of style, voice, idea, and rhythm. The audience lapped it up. We were local stars. Perhaps Eleanor Horrocks sometimes read, perhaps she didn't. Like me, as a woman reader, she was a rarity. All the rest were men. Gentle Bob Orr was there, also a 49er like Murray and me. He'd been at school with my brother Pete at St. Paul's, and his parents had a batch, the Orr's batch, on the road up the Thames coast, past Whakatete Bay. Bob was now a wharfie and wore shabby dress, so he no longer looked much like a St. Paul's boy, but he was a real poet. One from the docks. He adored Pablo Neruda, so we all read his great poem, The Heights of Machu Picchu, and I vowed one day I would visit Peru. Though by the time I could have, I decided not to, as it was overrun by tourists who came in such numbers it was damaging to the ancient site. Ian Weddy, Alan Brunton and Russell Haley, who hated that C.K. Stead had once named him the only Yorkshire surrealist poet in New Zealand, were in cahoots and had worked together on the little magazine The Word is Freed, which Murray had asked me to contribute to as well. Sometimes there were verbal fights among the men, opinionated, young, certain of themselves, of their art and way of it, their tongues mightier than their fists. They'd argue and contradict and discuss and drink, mostly beer, on and on into the night, sitting on the floor of the tiny living room at, say, Russell and Jean's house, wrangling. I wrote them a poem which, along with a few others, Murray first published in Freed, The Icemen. Where do they all go, these dealers in ice, pitching back and forth the jarred pick, stabbing at stunned ice rock? Recall, the stone blunts the scissors. Recall, a blunt knife splints desperate scratches on wedge-thick glass. Recall, a keen blade knifes sharp through flesh. The wound knits well, leaving but the thinnest line, a trace of fine cut. A man and a man with rounded swords fight a dubious battle. Sometime the sun may thirst for the ice rock, drink in cool, delicious flow. The pick will fall from the hand, and maybe the man will stand near the man and take the heat and take it slow. But who was I to try to tell them how to behave in what I thought was a gentler, more understanding, more loving and female way? I too used ampersands and as much lower case as I could, as we'd been taught to by David Mitchell, anti-intellectual and anti-establishment as he was. We were making our own stand against the lineup of older white male poets and writers, Alan Kernow, C.K. Stead, Kendrick Smitherman et al., who ruled the roost and set the tone. They were New Zealand poetry incarnate. And less facetiously now, a poem to one of those, to Ron Mason, Hone Tufore's mentor, hero and friend, the earliest of the poets in the great Mason, Glover, Fairbairn, Kernow, Brash tradition. It's called Poem for R.A.K. Mason. I come unasked to your funeral. The solemn men, dark-coated, your friends, give you their pass to heaven by a natural law. We were to have lauded you. You died a week too soon. From where I stand on the edge, I hear your words they read. Through the windows of the chapel, I see cabbage tree flax, flat and flecks, licking the blue sky, a whip in a green wind. And finally, what about sailing away, as we do at the end of Raiment, in the final section, 1972 to 74. On the wonderful Pacific Ocean, the poem I dedicated to my two shipmates, Robin and Blackie, who I so hope are watching this, 49 years after the event. Quiet in the eye for Blackie and Robin. 1. Weathered sailors secure in season shelter fall silent as we take a feast of days with Beaujolais in woven baskets, bully beef and avocado aboard Te Marina, 30 foot of old boned boat, tarred slack planks, beveled brass compass and sun awnings in hurricane season under tropical Capricorn. To sail now is folly, but we have other signatures. Thrown yarrow stalks guide towards an eastern star. 2. We've seen cyclones while anchored 6 feet from coral and played guitar to pitch-drunk sirens. We've been battened night-long in shelter of islands. We've seen water spew scum and weeds ashore and emerged as tourists to pick over debris of trees. We sail 3 days, watching the compass and turns, invent gadgets to make us millionaires, while a skinny barracuda dries, strips salted in the sun. 3. In a day, Tana lies to the south, and Eromanga, some low shoal whale-backed on a wide ocean. Efate west behind trawling lines, gentle and green in its lush hibiscus, some paradise twig in its teeth, where Melanesia under pandanus leaves in open market goes for 10 cents a pound. A boy lops his trousers or machetes a coconut for sweet milk in the heat. In Lustele, beer spills on the silk pants of a Don Juan, Outside his Maserati gleams through coral dust. Among pineapples at Melle, a Dunedin pilot plays grand opera in the shade in a canvas chair, drinking French perfume. For Christmas, the European prisoner shall have new cell furniture and serve dinner guests on the lawn. 4. Under Venus, the night watcher dreams of sailors as they lie day upon night, wrecked by a yacht's hard hammer, locked below and craving for quiet. But here in a mild gale, with steep grey seas curled by a knotted wind, while riding the cockpit bench, wheel lashed to 90 degrees, sails reefed and halyards straining, the rhythm of the sea burns cold salt hands. There are only sailors here. 5. Darkness lies over the deep until dawn, when footfall fills the mind. Clouds castle the disk horizon and the vaults of night open. Here no tall stick marks the rocks, no lighthouse sweeps the depth of the place. Now quiet lies on the unbreathed water, and light changes are fancies of wind on waves. The sea is the same, the day is the same, morning and evening are come and gone. 6. On the 8th day a cormorant bespeaks calm waters and land. Unaccustomed air is touched by the wild, and within that silent space holds no fear. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jan. That's absolutely wonderful. I've got to try and figure out.
You at the top, right?
Just get myself back here. Here we are. So, Jan, thank you. That was absolutely marvellous. So lovely to hear you read. That's just been really special, and I hope that it's given everyone a sense of a little bit of the shifts in Raiment, from the sweetness and innocence of those early Waikato years to the slightly darker and more serious tone as the years go by. It's a very, very special memoir, and it shines a light on an very important period, I think, particularly in Auckland and in our literary history.
Wonderful.
Right. Well, I think we might say Guten Abend, Jan. And
Guten Abend.
Yeah, and the book goes on sale officially tomorrow. If you'd like to get a copy, it should be in all good bookshops or from our website. And thank you all again. We really hope you get hold of a copy, and I think you'll enjoy it tremendously. Jan, just wanted to thank you again so much.
Oh, no, yes. Well, thank them for coming and listening, and I hope you enjoy reading it. Lovely to see you, Shashi. She's just had her book out too.
Glad to meet you.
All right, everyone. We'll leave.
Bye, Jenny.